Hello guys, welcome back to the channel for a new Databricks video. Today's video would be a quick one and it will be about reading multiple Excel sheets from one Excel file and combine the data into one single PySpark Dataframe. Yes, I know it's a simple task, however I ran into many issues recently when I tried to do it. The reason is I used the Spark Excel library, which is the recommended library in this case. However, although it's a great library, there is a limitation. You have to define the sheet names beforehand. But we want something more dynamic. We want something that we are going to provide the Excel file. It's going to read the Excel sheet names and then iterate through these names and get the data out of it. So how can we achieve that? We can achieve that by using the openpyxl Excel library. It's a little bit more code than the Spark Excel library, however, it's nothing very difficult. So let's get down to business and let's see how that works. Okay guys, so first things first, let's check the Excel file and see the data. Here we have multiple columns. We have 3 records with different row ID. The data in and of itself doesn't really matter here. Here it matters that we have some columns with this data and these row IDs here. And the Excel sheet name is sheet 1. Now the second tab, it's called test, right? And here we have another 3 records with different row ID, 4, 5 and 6. And the last tab, it's called demo and has another 3 records. So what's the goal here? The goal here is to combine these 3 records with those 3 records and those 3 records. So in total we should have 9 records. One thing to notice here, another thing to notice here is that we have three rows that are empty, right, before we get to the headers. And we also need to handle this case. It's a pretty typical case that you need to handle sometimes. Okay, now in our Databricks environment, the first thing we have to do is to install the openpyxl library. So pip install the openpyxl library and let's get down to business. Now first we specify the Excel path. I have already uploaded the Excel file that we just checked in our file store, right? So we specify the Excel path, dbfs file store demo.xlsx, right? And here from the openpyxl Excel library we import the load_workbook and here we provide the Excel path and we also specify the read_only mode, which is when you try to read huge Excel files so you don't get an error. And then for all these sheet names here, so we have for sheet name in workbook sheet names, and here this is how you can get the sheet names very dynamically, regardless of you don't have to define and provide the sheet names beforehand like in the Spark Excel library. So this is the advantage that we have here. We print the sheet names and then we create a workbook object and we store it as a sheet here, and then we have data equals read_sheet. We provide the object here, and inside this function what we are going to do is iterate through the rows. And here, as you can see, for row in sheet dot iter_rows, values only. So values only, this mode is when you want to exclude cell formatting, formulas, hyperlinks and all this kind of stuff, you only want the data. So that's what the values_only mode is, very useful. And then we can print the row, and here we can use any. You can customize this code as well. I just used any, so if not any, if there is no data, then skip this row, we don't want it, so continue. And if there is data, then append the data into the list here, the data list here, and return the list. Now let's run this and see what we get. I have included the print statements to go one by one to understand. So first we have this, the first tab, sheet 1, right? As you can see, the first 3 records, the first 3 rows were empty, remember? So that's false if we use any. So if it's false, then skip, right? Until we get to the headers, which is here we have true, and then we start collecting the data, right? The same for the second tab, and the first 3 records are empty, so we skip them, and the same for the third tab. So as you can see, we get the seed names from the workbook here object, right? Which is very, very useful, and this does not exist in the PySpark library, so it makes things a lot more dynamic. Now, the next part of the code is this one, right? So we assume that the first record is a header, and then the data starts from the second row onwards, right? That's why we use data 1 and semicolon until, you know, the end, right? So you can also print the data if you want, and then for each tab we create a separate data frame, and then we append these data frames into a list, right? So in this case we would have 3 data frames, and that's the purpose, right? So that's the next step. Let's see. And here, as you can see, the headers, we have the headers each time for each tab, and the data. The same for the first tab, as you can see here, and the 3 records we have on the first tab, and on the last tab exactly the same, the headers and the data. So now what are we going to do? The pretty obvious one, to iterate through this list of data frames. Let's define the first one, the final data frame, let's say, and that we provide the first data frame. And on top, on the first data frame, we are going to use the union by name, because we have exactly the same headers. This is very important to have the same headers, right? And we union the data frames separately in order to get the final output, which would be 9 records. So here I print for the data frame inside, you know, this loop here, and see through the iterations what we get. Let it run. And yeah, as you can see, in the first iteration we have the first 3 records, right? In the second iteration we union the next 3 records, so we have up to row ID 6, and then in the last iteration we have all the 9 records. And this is how you can use the openpyxl library to make things more dynamic and read all the data from multiple Excel sheets and combine them into one PySpark data frame. This is it for today, guys. I am going to upload this notebook on GitHub if you want to take a look. It's very quick and sweet solution, and instead of using PySpark library, use the openpyxl library. It does the same job and a lot more dynamically. If you like the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, guys.